Good evening, everyone. I'm Michael Blank, president of Lower Makefield Farmland Preservation Incorporated. And joining me tonight on this call are Dennis Stedman. Raise your hand, Dennis. Dennis is a vice president and acting secretary for the board. And also joining me is Sean Carney, a relatively new member. Thank you, Sean, of the Farmland Preservation. So let's get right into the agenda. The first item on the agenda, Dennis, is for approval of the minutes of our July 15th meeting. We did not have a meeting in August, so the public is aware of that.
Yes, we circulated thank you, Mike. We circulated those minutes amongst the board members. Were there any corrections, comments, additions?
None here.
Nope.
Hearing none, I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll make a motion for approval.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Minutes are approved. Back to you, Mike.
Okay, so the second item is our treasurer's report. Our treasurer will hopefully be joining us later, so we'll defer that topic until Dan Bonkoski joins us. The next item is an update on a telecon that was held with Jim Majewski of Lower Makefield Township. He had sent a draft of a new buffer ordinance for farmland. Well, it dealt with buffers in general in the township, but had a part of it that had to do with farmland, and he asked for our input. And I'll just kick it off. I think the basic, we learned a few things. One was that it would not pertain to existing farmland under our purview. So it would only apply to new land, and there's only a few farms in the township which could be preserved and border neighbors such that a buffer would be necessary. So it had to actually be for new developments that were built around those farms. And the second thing was that where we gave some input had to do with what the neighbors on their side of the fence would need to do as far as planting, and then what was required for the farmland buffer. So basically the farmland buffer, as I recall, we weren't required to do anything, just to keep it without planting, but the neighbors would be required to put up some plants of some types on their side. I think it's within 10 feet or so. So you want to add anything, Sean or Dennis, to that? What you recall?
No, I thought it was a good information on them wanting to hear from us with our experiences. The one takeaway I had was, their interest in leaving the buffer area just completely void of any trees, which will ultimately make that area, much easier on ourselves, farmers, everyone, and much more cost effective. So I did like that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought Jim did a good job of drafting, and the conversation that we had between Jim and the committee, I thought was productive, because we fine-tuned some things or introduced maybe some practicalities that weren't reflected in his draft of the legal language. So the ball is now in Jim's court, as these are township ordinances, and this was just our informal input, but I thought it was a good conversation. I'm glad he asked us for that.
Right. And maybe this is a heads up for people that are live near existing farmland that is not preserved, is that at least in the draft, there was, as I said, there were some requirements for neighbors on their side of the fence to do some planting. And I think at least one of us expressed some skepticism of how that would go over as a requirement for existing or new homeowners.
Well, I think Jim was taking that under advisement. Whether the final ordinance reflects that,
right,
is to be determined. Yeah.
Right. Again, it's only a draft. Yeah. Yeah.
And it pertained to borders with any farmland, not just preserve. So it there could be a single house going up next to a agricultural area that this would apply to.
Right. Yep. Okay. Anything else on that topic? John, anything from the public? Any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay. Just curious, John, are there any members of the public, we've never asked this question before, who are on this call besides us at the moment?
Not at the moment.
Okay. But obviously, I guess that could change. People could log on.
Yep, I will let you know if anybody does.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, good. Well, the next few, 1, 2, 3, 4 topics are for Dan. So we'll defer those until, and if he joins, we'll turn to Dennis. Tree work at 1636 Brentwood Road, which borders our parcel called Makefield Brook. Dennis?
Yeah, no real change. The homeowners, as you recall, are hiring a contractor to go onto our property with our approval to remove the broken tree, and that is scheduled for September 21st. And our neighbors there said, they'll let us know at that time if there's any issues. So right now, nothing new to report. It's scheduled for the 21st of September.
And remind me, Dennis, we were able to get a certificate of insurance from them, or we're still waiting for that?
We are waiting for that. They said that they would have that forthcoming as the date approached, as the work was actually going to begin. So we do not have that in our possession now. They're using a credible common tree service that
Right.
is commonly used throughout the area. That's a professional outfit, but we do have that request in.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now we have a couple items for Sean. The first one, any comment from the public on that, John?
No public comment.
Okay. Sean, this is about a proposal. We'll start to think about ground rules for what would give us comfort and reason to remove trees.
Yeah, I think this came about after a couple different conversations. I think, the conversation we had with Jim Majewski about different terms and definitions around dead and dying trees. I think going and visiting 2367 Throwbridge and seeing that tree live kind of made me think about it. But I think we have an opportunity here to perhaps put some ground rules in for what we feel are trees that could potentially cause damage, or whether it be to persons or to a residence, as well as kind of where they sit. So when I drove out to see the tree at 2367 Throwbridge, the one thing that I thought to myself was, I looked at the property line. We've measured that property line for other reasons. And if I ran a stringer across the fence line, at least a portion of the tree in question would touch that stringer. So in an instance like that, I believe that giving the homeowner the benefit of the doubt that they're not just looking to take down any living tree that they possibly can, and they're really looking at trees that pose danger in one way, shape, or form. If something is touching or bordering their property line, that we can take that decision and leave that decision up to them. Obviously, the cost is going to be up to them as well. So, the decision, the cost, I think we have an opportunity to do this. As of right now, we've kind of been going along with the dead and or dying definition. The conversation with Jim, I think, opened us up to maybe a few more iterations of how that could work, and seeing some real live examples of this. I take people at their word, and they're looking to do what's best for the property line, but also for the property that they're invested in. And this tree that we looked at in the last month, it's a very large tree. It could be destructive if it fell. I don't believe that it would fall. It looks rather healthy, but that's also not for me to determine. And we do get some storms around here, and I wouldn't want that on our conscience by any means. If the homeowner is asking for it to come down and it's actually touching their property on their side, then I think they should probably have that right. So just wanted it to kind of be a conversation, and also give us the opportunity to maybe redefine a bit of the rules around some of these trees that have gotten rather large over the years, and maybe weren't meant to be as large as they are, but have gotten so.
I agree with your line of thinking there, Sean, and I think one of the terms that Jim introduced to us that kind of flipped that switch in my mind as well was, does it represent a risk, right? The word risk, it wasn't just dead and dying, but it posed some risk to property or to the homeowner. I think that helps with the guidelines. So I appreciate how you're trying to define it. I support that.
And when Jim said that, he said it in a way that it was to a common folk as well. It wasn't to some arbitrary figure. It was, if you mentioned to another common person, does this tree pose any amount of risk, and they nod their head yes, well, then there's risk there. So I like that. I think it brings common sense into the equation. And in some of these instances, I think that's exactly what we need. We need some latitude for some common sense as well.
Mm-hmm. And so if it's planted obviously more on our side and was planted in the buffer area, but happens to touch the neighbor's property as well, I guess this is for further discussion. Is that something we ask a neighbor, would they share part of the cost in taking it down if it's not dead or dying?
I almost view it the other way, Mike, in the sense that it's going to be the neighbor that hopefully these people did the right thing in reaching out to us proactively to have us look at the tree. We could have shown up one day and that tree's on the ground, and what would we have done? I guess would be my point. These people proactively reached out to us. So I view it the other way, in that the tree is in the buffer. Where it was planted, I don't know, but the circumference now is so large that it's touching their property, it's touching our property. If at their expense they want to have it removed for any reason that we deem reasonable, then so be it. If it's going to be something that falls on our expense, then that's something that we're ultimately going to need to budget for and or vote on. But we are going to have to look at each other and say, yes, it poses a risk. This isn't something we're going to do so that a neighbor has a better view of what lies behind it. This is going to have to be something that we view as a risk and could cost us more down the road. Remember, we talk about this often. Proactive removing of dead or dying trees, or those that pose a risk, is a lot cheaper than reactively doing it once it's on the ground.
And thanks for the reminder that this neighbor had offered to pay for removal.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Now I'm reminded of the old farmer's fence rule, right? And it's kind of common law that if a tree is completely on, let's say, my side of the fence, that's my tree and my responsibility. However, any part of that tree at any point drawing a straight line from that boundary line straight up to the sky, the neighbor if that tree is hanging over, can trim anything that's over the air of their property. So if there's limbs on our property that is a neighbor's tree, we can trim that at the fence line. And the same is true in reverse. They can trim limbs off of a tree on our property if it's vertically over that line, that imaginary straight line. And that same principle holds that if a tree trunk is on the line, if part of the trunk is on both sides. You draw the boundary and it goes through the trunk.
Mm-hmm.
The old farm rule was that's a joint tree and it's taken down if both parties agree and both parties share the cost.
Mm-hmm.
That's a joint tree. It's a line tree.
Mm-hmm.
It's ours and theirs. It belongs to both. It's both parties' responsibilities. No one party can take it down without the concurrence of the other, and both parties pay. I mean, that was just always the old farm rule, and I think it's applicable in our circumstances. If it's a joint tree, joint responsibility.
Dennis, are you
Like-
suggesting that if this tree is on both properties, which I believe it to be with my eye, it would touch any string that we drew over across the property line? If the neighbor is contacting us proactively stating that they would like to have the tree taken down, it's not dead, it's not dying, it has gotten very tall, very heavy. Limbing it is not an option. It will not remove enough that, and they're willing to pay for it, that we shouldn't accept that proposal, but come back and say that we'll jointly, that we'll accept partial responsibility and jointly pay for its removal?
No, I'm not saying that we need to volunteer to pay for half. I'm saying if they're to take it down, great. It's a joint decision. Both parties need to concur. If one party is passionate about it and wants to take it down, Godspeed. But in a gray area or area of dispute, which we've had in the past, where neither party really wants to pay,
Sure,
we share it because it's a joint tree. It's a line tree.
okay. Yeah, I fully agree with that interpretation. I think if anyone views this tree, they'll view it the same way. I went there hoping that it could be limbed, and in limbing it, we could remove enough weight that it wouldn't be a risk. That's not a possibility with this tree when you see it.
Right.
I mean, if you think it's productive for this board to actually, and I'm not saying at this moment, but to write up a short resolution of the definition of associated with these trees, this kind of what we just talked about, this kind of policy, we could certainly do that and have it in the record and have it in the bylaws or whatever. I think it might get a little too complicated for us to make a motion and approve it here on this call because we all want to see the document. But
Right.
I think it'd be wise for us to just put that down once, and then forever we can refer to that, or our successors can refer to that, and we can. And if there's a dispute with a neighbor, we can say here's our policies. This is how, because it's important that we treat all neighbors the same, and an objective about it, and policy would provide that. So I would be in favor of us drafting that policy. And then, making a motion to approve it at our next meeting.
I agree with that. I think it would make it a lot easier for us in the future when addressing these issues, which we know are going to come up time and time again, given the condition of the buffers and the aging of the buffers.
As we were going along, I was thinking that maybe it's just common sense that we could just follow and do it on a case-by-case basis. But I agree with you, Dennis. I think it would help to put down some simple codification, and your knowledge of this, of the farming rules of the road would be helpful. You want to take a crack at this, Dennis? Just put down a few.
Yeah, I'll take a crack at it and circulate it to the board, and have your way with it.
Yeah, and then we can add or subtract and modify. Yeah, great. I'm just making a note of that. Tree removal. Okay, well, I'm doing it. John, any comments from the public? John,
No
are you
public
there?
comment.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay. So we're finished with that.
Mhm.
The next thing was for Sean, and that was on an idea that we had to put together a sort of spreadsheet, kind of a list of projects for our landscaper, Corcoran, to take care of. And we came up with two. Sean, do you
Yeah.
want to?
So a couple things here. I'm meeting with Matt tomorrow here at my house to go over a couple things. He still has the contract that we drafted to sign, so he'll sign this tomorrow. Once that's signed, I will scan it and put it in our folder. But I've created this spreadsheet. It's called Project List for Corcoran Landscaping, Lower Makefield Farmland Preservation. You can all see it. This is the winter 21-22 project. It's simple. We have our job numbers. We have our classification. By classification, I just want to go with a yellow, green, red type of classification. I'm assuming we're not going to have reds on here because reds are going to be, we're going to contact Matt and have him out there rather immediately. This isn't going to wait for our winter months. So these will mostly be yellows and greens, but we have two listed: the location, the farm, the contact person for that farm, and then a brief job description. And then I have a few more fields that I just think are useful for us. Type of contact. Were we contacted by the township because the person reached out to the township? Were we contacted by the neighbor directly via phone or email? Just so that we know how to reach back to them, or correct, perhaps if they went to the township, we can now use this as a moment to have them reach out directly to us. And then approximate time. If you look at the tree or the project that you want to put on the list, give me an idea in layman's terms of what you think this is. Is this a 1 hour job? Is this a half a day job? Is this a full day job? Just so that what I can do is I can then organize these by farm, sit down with Matt come October and say, here's our winter list. We have 10 days that we've purchased. Here's some of the work at the different farms, and we can put together a plan. And then the last two columns I have is whether they've been communicated to Matt yet or not, and then the date of which they were, just for record keeping reasons. This way we can always go back and reference this spreadsheet, which we all have access to. So my request would be, if anyone adds anything to this, just send a message in our teams, added something to the spreadsheet, or reach out to me and just let me know what you want added. And I'm glad to do it and stay in contact with Matt about it. But I think that's a very good way for us to organize and plan our winter projects. You know, we had a meeting last year where we kind of ranked our projects in order of importance. We'll throw these in there and plan our 10 days that we're purchasing in the winter, you know, to have work done.
And so if any one of us can enter a project or a need in there, when you're talking about a rough estimate of the time involved, I would think that from my perspective, we're probably in a best position to only say, is it less than a day or more than a day?
Sure, and that's perfectly fine.
We can't fine tune that, right?
That's perfectly fine.
Under less than a day or more. Because I'd hesitate to guess how much he can do in a day or not. You know what I mean?
Sure, and that's perfectly fine. But you know, for instance, Dan and I went out to a neighbor's home earlier. Well, it would have been in August, to take care of a job that we felt we could handle on our own. It'd be like a 20-foot tree overhanging a fence onto a neighbor's property. It worried him. We went out and with my chainsaw, you know, we cut it down. We cut it into pieces. We threw it over the fence. So now the project went from cutting a tree and removing it to us stacking all of the brush on the other side of the fence for Matt to come in when he's doing buffer maintenance or clearing and just remove what's there. So, you know, just being able to kind of estimate. But yes, less than a day, more than a day is perfectly acceptable. I'll leave that up to Matt to determine. A day for him is 8 hours. I'll tell you, it's amazing what his crew can accomplish in 8 hours.
And does the buffer maintenance, because I know we talked about this before, Sean, does that buffer maintenance by Corcoran fit into this, or we're only listing major jobs on that spreadsheet?
For now,
kind of do work.
yeah, for now, we're listing major jobs on here, but as you recall, the meeting that we had, I want to say late last year, where we kind of prioritized our properties, red, yellow, green again, where we're going to do buffer maintenance. If that farm comes up on our list, then this would kind of just get incorporated right in that work.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that might be the case because we did Stackhouse last year. We did Leadham's last year. I would assume maybe Heather Ridge is a farm that we'll be doing, looking at the fence line. And if that's true, then one of those jobs is going to get incorporated right in that. But that's my hope with the spreadsheet, to be able to consolidate and make Matt's time as efficient as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Because
ultimately, Farm View 1 is another one, and we're just talking about a portion of Farm View 1 at the angle there off of Woodside. Mm-hmm. But there may be other parts of that could use cleaning out. So I guess I don't know if we want him to have. I guess we should have him look at the entire field.
Yes.
To get an idea.
Look at each of these jobs and then incorporate anything else that we're looking to have done on that farm at the same time. Because once his equipment is there, it's the most efficient for us and our use of time for him to not be moving that equipment around.
Sure. I will say that pleasantly, not surprised, but I'm pleased that you've got the contract signed. I didn't know that he was in the mood to do that.
Yes. I reached out to him earlier today. It's something that we verbally agreed upon before vacation started and family thing. He'll be by tomorrow to sign it. We're good. And we're on the same page as far as going forward. So we'll have a good partner in he, for our farms.
So we're all in agreement that those two items on that spreadsheet as they stand now, Heather Ridge and the Heather Ridge trees, Heather Ridge Drive, I guess it is, where those 3 trees are dying.
Yep.
And Farm View 1, we're in agreement that that's the work he's going to at least start on this winter.
That's correct. That will be part of the plan. It's just a matter of, putting the plan together once we have all the puzzle pieces. I'm assuming we will have more jobs than this come October, November. And when we do, we'll give it to him and let him put the puzzle pieces together.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Great work on that, Sean. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Any public comment, John, on that item?
No public comment.
All right. So I'm going to give an update on Community Day. As we all know, we offered all of the farmers the opportunity to participate in LMT's Community Day. And one farm, the Farmland farm, took us up on the offer, and we sponsored them. And they had a nice tent next to the corn hub, they call it, a food truck that they supplied with corn. The weather was not good, so I know in just texting Tim Stewart today that Cindy, his aunt, didn't get a lot of traffic through there, but he said that she would be willing to consider it again next year. So I think we should do the same thing, is offer it to all the farmers, and if we get any takers, then we would sponsor that farm. And hope that the weather is better this year. Now,
a question, Mike.
Yeah.
If multiple farmers took us up on that, we have multiple farmland preservation signs to post.
We do.
Not that it's a problem.
Yeah, we do. We have one or two extra in the sign shop, so I think we'd be covered.
Great. Thank you.
Good thought. And of course, the Stewart tent, the Charland Farms tent, was located in the food area. Now, if we got somebody else with a different bent, and I'm also thinking of the next sort of subtopic here, honeybees, we might think about relocation. So, well, Dennis, what's the thought on that, on having a honeybee display with Dr. Sternman?
Sure. Well, first of all, shame on me for not thinking of it sooner, because we reached out to Sven, our beekeeper, just a week before. He was out of town. He was traveling and not able to participate. But let me just say that he was very enthusiastic about the opportunity to talk about bees and to introduce, beekeeping and all of the things that go with that and pollinators to the community. So he is an experienced educator in this field, and he said, if he's given a notice next year, he could have displays, and I could tell he was enthusiastic to put together something that he thought would be, educational and interesting. So I do think we want that on our calendar for next year. And while we're talking about that, could I insert a little honeybee hive update?
Sure. Yeah, please.
Let me, if I can share my screen here. I got an update from Sven here just a few days ago. Let me figure out how to do this.
Yep, you can see it now.
So just a couple bullet points. These are the two hives, Hive 1 and Hive 2. I think if you look closely, you can figure out the numbering scheme based on the entrance, the bottom entrance to the hive. You can tell which one is 1 and which one is 2. And he told me that here just in the last week or so, they inserted in comb honey supers. Don't ask me what those are. That's what you into each hive to accommodate the growing population. Both hives are healthy. The one hive was a little questionable a month or two ago, but he's very pleased. Both hives are thriving. And he thinks both hives are capable of honey production in their first year, which is quite nice. Hive 1, he put in 1 comb honey super, and Hive 2 has 2. Hive 2 is a little healthier. He said with luck, they can be harvesting honey at the end of September. It would be comb honey, not pure honey. And he said 1, maybe 2 board members, he would welcome our participation if we wanted to get involved with the harvesting or packaging. We can coordinate on some dates and let us know if it works out. I think it's a good experience. I recommend it to the board. But you can see the kind of care he takes in the hives with his the paint and the decals and things. And I think that's the kind of attention that he would bring to, a honeybee display at community days next year. So
maybe he could even, I know that he's not in the business to sell his honey necessarily, but maybe he could even, if he chose to.
No, U.S. Regulate, he's not USDA to sell commercial honey. So the honey he produces, he gives away to friends and family. It's a gift. There are different regulations to actually sell a food product that he doesn't qualify for. So
right.
We'll sort that out if there's something that could be done next year, or
at least
relative to community days. But
maybe have samples or something like that.
Yeah,
but yeah.
And the last thing I would say on the honeybees is I have talked to at least one of the hunters who hunts, who uses the red tag, archery red tags. They've noticed the hives in that area. They're aware of them. They're not any kind of problem to the hunter, and the hunter is not any kind of problem to the hive. So they're happily, coexisting, just as a footnote. So that's our honeybee update.
That's great. Thank you, Dennis. Count me in as one of the board members interested, at least.
Okay.
You might have to do a drawing to see who wins.
Sean?
I have great interest as well. Unfortunately, my calendar is something that will most likely prohibit me from being able to do it. But I do have great interest in it. One other thing I'd like to say, that was a very good update, so thanks for bringing it to us. I don't know how tightly knit this community is, but my understanding is people who share this hobby are a rather tightly knit community. The home behind me back on Colavita's Christmas tree farm here recently changed hands, I'd say in the last 8 months. I notice out my back deck that they have 2 or 3 hives set up back on their property that look almost identical to those pictures you just showed us. I often have my binoculars out looking for deer in the soybean fields and in cornfields, but I've noticed the exact same thing. So these 2 gentlemen can't live more than a mile apart from each other. If they ever wanted to connect, I'd be happy to try and make that connection.
Oh, that's great. Okay. All right. Well, I would say that our neighbors on Brentwood, who we were just talking about previously with the tree scheduled to come down, when I visited them to see that tree, they brought up the honeybee hives, and they said, "Oh, we were so excited to hear about that. We got your letter and we thought that was a great idea." They were, very enthusiastic about it. So that was good to hear.
Yes, very good.
Great. I was going to rename whatever those things on top were, like superstructures. I couldn't tell, maybe penthouse, bee penthouse. That's great. That's wonderful. Thank you, Dennis. That's
Well, Sven will let me know when they're ready for the harvesting, and then we'll coordinate on calendars and see who can make it, and we'll figure that out at the time.
Yeah, please keep us in the loop. Thank you. Thanks, Dennis. Any comment, John, from the public on that topic, honeybees?
No public comment.
Okay. All right, so we'll go through a couple other items here, and then we'll see if Dan is able to join us or not. So upcoming meetings. So of course, this month is Zoom. Next month is Zoom. I haven't heard yet from Katie McVeigh whether the further meetings, but I anticipate with Delta virus still out there that we will have Zoom meetings, I would say, for a few more months at least. So if we're all happy with that, that if that's okay, that's what I'll communicate, that we're okay with that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I figured as much. Good. So I'll keep you updated on the future meetings. I know Sean any comment on that from the public, John, on upcoming meetings?
No public comment.
Okay. Other business, I know, Sean, you have a few items, and Dennis, please, if you have any as well. And I have one myself. Go ahead, Sean.
So just a few items, but like I said, I'm happy to table these for further discussion when Dan's able to join us, or in an executive session around buffers, because at the end of the day, I think they all, in one way, shape, or form come back to that. But did want to, get them at least into the minutes as further discussion. We sent out a letter a couple months ago, reintroducing ourselves to neighbors with the understanding that properties turn over. People, maybe are not familiar with, who their neighbor is back behind the fence and so on. I think one thing that I'd like to add to our next letter when we send it has a mention in there about the integrity of the fence line and the responsibility of it. And my reasoning for this is, today I went and walked the fence line of Stackhouse and Leadham's for a couple reasons. We had a board meeting tonight. I've been away for a couple months, wanted to go walk them. The buffer was last cut on June 5th, so we're coming up on 3 months. So wanted to see how that looked. Several reasons. I noticed that 2 fences on Leadham's have been snipped at the furthest extent of the property line on like the last post, and it's quite evident why. They're both snipped for the same reason. And it's so that they can pull the fence back and mow behind it or maintain the area behind it. And, you know, I have mixed feelings on that. Part of me thinks about the liability that we incur when people do this. And part of me as a neighbor myself thinks, hey, you know, they're just looking to, you know, keep the back of their property line neat. So again, mixed feelings on it. But I'm wondering if in the letter we can put something that if the integrity of the fence is broken or compromised, because let's think about why that's there, and that's what's happening, that it could be deemed that we have that fence replaced at the homeowner's expense. And I wonder if that maybe deters people from this. I mean, if the integrity of the fence is compromised by either climbing over it, putting tools over it, or cutting through it to do that, then I think that, you know, people need to think in the back of their mind, I could be served a bill if the farmland preservation deems that my fence needs to be replaced to keep that integrity of the fence line in place. So just a thought, you know, again, mixed feelings, but something to discuss. Hunter contact info.
The other
Yeah.
thing, Sean, before you move on, I do have a comment, and that they ought to be reminded that that's a trespass.
Agreed. Yeah, again,
So,
agreed.
Yeah, it's a tough one because like you say, I appreciate, you know, a neighbor who's, you know, need enough, concern enough to want to keep that far side organized and tidy, but it is no trespassing, and we have to be careful because if you let the buffer be managed by the neighbor, pretty soon, you know, the kids are playing there and it's a good place to play bocce or put up a swing. You know, where does it stop?
Agreed.
It's not a common area for their use. And so I agree with you, Sean, we have to be, we have to be, you know, consistent on that, and we can't have the fence violated.
Yeah, I can say that both of these residents are, you know, within shouting distance of my home. I've never seen either occupy it in any way, shape, or form. It's literally the mowing of it to mow it down to the height of their yard. It looks pretty. It looks very, very nice aesthetically. I understand what they're doing, but at the same time,
Yeah.
I understand the liabilities that can come with it and the trespassing that's going on. So again, I'd love to discuss it, but I also think it's something that we want to have in that letter the next time that letter goes out. I think it would be a good addition to that letter.
Okay, I agree.
My another topic would be hunter contact info. You know, at the end of the day, that property is leased, you know, it's deeded to the Farmland Preservation Incorporated. We are ultimately the owners. It's fine that the farmers that lease the property grant permission to people to hunt. At the same time, I do think that we should be made aware of those that have been given permission, and if nothing else, given their contact information. I've given John Doe permission to hunt on Stackhouse, a licensed hunter. Will be hunting there during deer season, whatever it is. Here's his name, his contact information. You know, I walked across a blind the other day. I don't want to walk across someone's blind. The worst feeling on earth is thinking you're in someone's crosshairs at any time. Granted, it wasn't occupied at the time, but getting to the bottom of how it got there and who gave them permission took several steps. And I just think that we could alleviate a lot of time and energy if we were just proactively given the information of the hunters that have been given permission and the farms that they're hunting on. So that would be a request, you know, more so than anything else.
Yeah, on that topic, with our red tag program, in order for a hunter to get a red tag, they have to provide me with their name, their address, their telephone number, their game commission license number, and the red tag is for a particular property. So they're only on Makefield Brook, or they're only on, you know, whatever the property.
Yeah.
I have that information during red tag. When it
Yeah.
comes to the ordinary hunting season, however,
Yeah.
I don't have that information because I know Sam or other farmers may be giving permission to other people beyond the red tag hunters. And, and I don't know where they are or who they
Yeah.
are. Now, all the red tag hunters also hunt during the regular season.
Yes.
But there are additional ones as well. So we would have to go to Sam and get those names and what properties they're hunting and their contact information.
Yeah.
For those who aren't red tags. And that's the only way to do it that I know of.
Yeah, this was a non-red tag situation,
Yeah.
so we wouldn't have had the information. But I think it's within our rights to ask, and ultimately, we're going to be held liable for anything. So I think it's something that we should obtain personally.
Well, we've had this informal gentleman's agreement policy that the farming tenant gives permission to the hunters, right? Farming tenant is who's on that land with their equipment and they know these hunters. And if we want, and we could change our policy to say that in order to hunt on our land, you need permission from the farming tenant and from us.
Mhm.
Get permission from us. You need your name, you need your number. We need to know that the farmer has given you permission, and we get permission. And I wouldn't get permission you need permission from both, I guess is the point, both the landowner and the land tenant.
Mhm.
That would be one way to try to impose what you're getting at, Sean.
Well, in this instance, and this is one instance, the blind was set up feet off of someone's property who didn't have any idea it was there, and didn't like that it was there, quite honestly. So, here we are in a situation where, who do I start contacting? Also, it's in a precarious spot. I can see it from the road. Others can see it from the road. It's partially hidden by the crop. As soon as that crop comes down, this has to go. And I don't think the farmer is going to be the one to tell them that. This is going to be seen by way too many neighbors once the crop is removed. So also, the person doesn't know that there's a home being built directly behind where that blind is at any time now. Had no idea. So being able to give some of that information really helps in a lot of instances. Whether we need to go the route of two routes of permission, or just asking that when the farmers do give a hunter permission that we're given their name and contact information, I'd find that to suffice. But again, for discussion.
Yeah, well, Sean, I'm wondering how we'd really enforce this, because you go out and find some. We'd only come across this if someone complained, a neighbor, or we went out in the field, I think like you did, and see somebody. We'd ask them for their name. But then how would we do that? We just cross-check a list we have, or?
Well, if I came across a hunting blind on Stackhouse and I had a piece of paper that said I gave John Doe permission to hunt Stackhouse during the season, I would look at that and say, okay, we know this is here. But when I come across it and the property owner next door knows nothing about it, we know nothing about it, I wasn't getting any response back from the farmers right away. Dennis was able to step in and help me, and we were able to find out how this all processed. But it took days, and I was within a day of going over and just taking it down and leaving a note, so that we could get in touch with the person if that's what we had to do. But I'd rather not go that route. I think we alleviate all of it if, when the farmers give permission to someone to hunt, we're just kind of given the contact information as well, and we can cross-check it.
Yeah, I know the practice in the case of Sam is he gives somebody permission that he knows, and counting on him to ask for a name, ask for a cell number, and then forward it on to me or you or anybody. Odds of that happening are probably pretty low. It's when people are hunting, it's their busy it's a farmer's busy time, right? They're getting ready for harvest. They're kind of allergic to that kind of administration at that time of year. So you just,
So this may be another
request, it
that
just
we,
practically be awkward.
yeah, and maybe that's another administrative thing that we could take off their hands, but we still have to go to them, Sam, Tom, whoever, and ask first. And I think it's unlikely that they're going to be that cooperative in a timely fashion.
Well, and I was a go-between here last week, I guess it was, a hunter who wanted to hunt some of our property that Tom leases. And that hunter got my name, and I went back and forth. Tom is not granting permission to anyone to hunt our property. He's had too many negative experiences over the years. And so when I asked on behalf of this individual, if I could give Tom's number to this individual so he could talk to him, Tom was a real quick and hard no.
No, yeah.
No, he's not doing it. As much as he would like the deer population reduced, he doesn't like it. So I do think it probably comes down to Sam's properties. And I know
Bob too, I think has
Bob has
Doesn't
he grants permission to 2 or 3 hunters, I want to say, every year the same group
Oh, okay.
on his property. I know we don't go on Bob's property so much.
Right.
I'm kind of comfortable with Bob managing that. He's comfortable with it. I mean, his house is right there. He's local. It's not far afield.
I do walk that property. I do walk that property. I snowshoot in the winter. I walk it.
Oh, do you? Okay.
I do know the hunters that hunt on that back row.
Okay.
I know them from elsewhere,
Okay.
but I know them. They're all up in the air hunting, shooting downward. The one thing that caught me by surprise was this blind, being down on the ground.
Oh,
I mean, at the end of the day, while we lease the property, if God forbid something happened in a hunting accident, it's going to go right past the lessor in a hurry to the deemed owner of the properties. So I just think having the ability to know who these people are, helps us. That would be my, just my thought on that.
I'm agreeing with you. It's more a question of how to best
Sure.
accomplish that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. My other two, I'll make very quick. The buffers, I mean, I contacted Tim today just to kind of get an idea of when they'll be back out. They're having some mower issues right now, but I went to walk the buffer today. I would say I had to walk in the crop for hundreds and hundreds of yards because the crop was up to my waist and the buffer was over my head. So, I mean, my question would be, given that 6 months of the year, the buffer is not being maintained because of dormancy, let's call it November, December, January, February, part of March, whatever it may be. The first cutting took place on June 5th this year, 3 months ago, in a few days. I'm wondering if it's too much to ask that during the active season, the buffer's cut every other month. We get, 3 or 4 cuts, that way. And it is brought down. I've gotten several comments myself about the fence line and its height and how quickly it's growing. But to be done 4 times a year, meaning once every 3 months, isn't practical. It doesn't get done for a certain amount of months. I'm wondering if every other month it being cut during the active season is something we could talk to the farmers about. Again, I know they're busy. Right now they have some equipment issues. They wanted to start cutting last month. They haven't been able to get the parts they need to cut. But the buffer in spots you can't get through it. You can physically not get through it. It's that high and that thick. So it was just a thought.
I
Yeah.
totally agree. And with all the rain we've had, it makes it worse. And I've requested, and I don't think it's been followed through on, having a couple of the properties that I look after mowed, and don't think they've been done frequently enough.
Yeah.
So that's a great point.
We've had one cut June 5th. They looked great on June 6th. I'll tell you that. But boy, all that work that we did and walking them today was so discouraging in the sense that it all comes back that fast. I mean, granted, the vines aren't back and that kind of stuff, but it's something to see. So,
Well,
yeah.
I agree with you, Sean, and I'm looking at the lease. The lease does not say that they're cut quarterly. The lease says the leasee shall maintain the farmland buffer and mow the same a minimum of 4 times per year.
Mm-hmm.
It's really 4 mowings is what the lease calls for. Obviously, you're not mowing in, November through April. So it's not every 3 months. It's not quarterly. It's 4 times during the growing season, the non-dormant season called. So I think you're right, and I think that's a fair position to take. That 4 cuttings between May and October, or whatever, however you want to define it, it every other month.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then my last topic was just, for us to continue to think about a full board. I mean, Dennis has a lot on his plate. He's taken on some more and new responsibilities, and I would love nothing more to say, Dennis, I can, take, some of your responsibilities as secretary off your plate. And I look at my calendar and it'd be disingenuous. I can't do it to the ability that you do it. But I keep thinking about, us having a full board again. So whether it's these community days, if people come around and are asking a lot of questions, maybe they're the right person to recruit, or, it's somebody who has an idea for us and how to do something. Maybe it's them. I don't know the answer, but I just want to continue to think about us, filling this board, because it does alleviate some, some pressure and some jobs. So,
and it's a good point. Very good. And one of the feedback we had from James when we asked for the board of supervisors to let us, talk to people before they actually sign up was, well, you guys could do more recruiting, and you could actually help in recruiting, select the kind of people you want, like with Sean. So it's an excellent point. I think we should be more cognizant of that and take every opportunity to talk to people.
Another list that becomes a possible group of candidates, it could be this list that we get from the farmers of hunters. Maybe one of these people that hunt, they're a lower Makefield Township resident that has thoughts, ideas, they enjoy the property, obviously, they're outdoors people. This could ultimately become a list that we have that we can speak to these people, and when we're getting to know them, ask them if they have any interest in joining the board. I just see people like that as more candidates, more possibilities to recruit, to fill the board. That's all.
And I think as we see with Sean, as an example, I mean, your property borders, farmland property. So I think when we meet neighbors in fallen trees and dealing with different experiences, that's another opportunity to kind of get a sense of interest and desire to get involved. So
very good point.
It's a good reminder. Thanks.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for ways, Sean, thank you for these other topics to affect some of these things. So I think as an action item, I wrote down, maybe you could draft some language for a future letter regarding fence integrity.
Sure.
So we have that tucked away. And then the list of authorized hunters. Do you want, Dennis?
I can speak to Sam. Excuse me, before our, the season starts, correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, I think it's September 17th or.
Okay.
It's only it's less than 2 weeks away.
Right. And with Bob, I mean,
17th or 18th. I'd have to look it up, but the red tag will end, and then it's a regular hunting season in this game management area. So I'll speak to Sam. I'll reach out to him and see if I can't get the names and numbers of others who aren't red tag hunters that I already have, and see how that goes.
how about Bob? Bob would be simple since he always has the same people. He'd probably get those easily.
I'm sure we could. I'll reach out to Bob and Sam.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Seems like I probably would get, to communicate about the buffers more frequently and talk about every other month. Yeah. Or have you already broached this with Tim, Sean?
I didn't broach it with him. I basically just, lobbed in a text message asking him when they'd be back out cutting. I know they were here in early June, haven't seen them since. Tried to walk the buffer today and found it rather, challenging. And he sent back, sorry for the delay. Would love to have done it. Just, tractor broke, waiting on parts. Supply chains are messed up. And there's nothing you can do. That is what it is. I think we've all grown to be a little more empathetic and patient with things in what we've experienced. So it is what it is. But, what Dennis read makes me believe that, by default, during the active season of growth, these should be getting cut every other month for them to meet the 4 times a year. So, maybe it's just nothing more than a reminder, but I did not broach that topic with them. I don't feel as though I know them to that level. I just left it at more. If you can let me know when you'll be cutting again, I'd appreciate it.
I'll contact them about, all of them about, during growing season, but do it more frequently. Yep.
The neighbors are paying. The neighbors are paying attention. I can tell you that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, okay. Enough said there. Kind of remote more frequently. Okay, and then I guess it's up to us, just to be cognizant about needing another board member and making contacts wherever we can. Good reminder.
Yeah, agreed.
Good. So Dan hasn't joined. Now, before we get off, let's see if there's anything that we can provide an update on that we might know about here. I can tell you that this is going back to replanting of evergreen trees at 2033 Trowbridge. So Dan has sent a reminder to Mr. Patel that he had committed to doing that this September. And I don't think he's heard back, or I would have been copied. Do you know anything further on that?
Didn't see any reply, but that was the agreement the night we were there in his yard and showed him where they were planted versus where the line was.
Right, because that was the advice of his landscaper to wait till September.
Correct, to not kill them.
Okay.
Yeah.
The tree removal at 2367 Trowbridge.
Yeah.
That's the large tree that you've been talking about, Sean, right?
Correct. That's the neighbor one to the right that I had driven out to take a look at, and then had a good conversation with Dan afterwards.
I think Dan might have been waiting perhaps for Jim Majewski to have a look and maybe give his opinion. Like
That's
he still
correct.
was, yeah. Should we? We'll wait for Dan on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, dead and dying trees on Heather Ridge Drive, the next one, that's taken care of because that's on our list now for Corcoran.
Yeah, so we removed one large tree.
Right.
There's more on that property that are questionable. But while we were there, it was obvious that buffer area needs some attention. So we're thinking that it can kind of all be done at one time. But, there are certainly trees that are growing from our side up over onto the other side that aren't what I'd consider to be the healthiest trees. We did let the neighbor know that he could trim them back. Anything that came over the fence line, feel free to trim back until we could get someone out there to decide what we're going to do. But that buffer area needs some attention. So we're hoping to be able to do it in one shot, but I'd refer to Dan on that. That's his property.
Okay. And the other thing, well, this particular agenda topic has to do with the 3 trees that are actually on Heather Ridge Drive. They're not bordering, they're bordering a sidewalk.
Got it.
Those 3. So Dan has sent pictures of those. I think we're in agreement that they should be taken down. What started this was a neighbor across the street was having an upcoming to do of something, and he saw these.
Yeah.
The limbs looked bad, and he some had fallen off. I'm not sure which he cut or they'd fallen off, but anyway, he put them in a pile. Dan and I went out and put him in his truck and took him over to Clearview in a couple runs and cleaned that up. But still, those trees are obviously not in good shape. Mike, I call him the enforcer, if you LMT enforcement officer, Mike Kirk, went out to look at them, and he was of the opinion that they probably need to be taken down.
Okay.
And then the buffer clean out Farmview one, that's on the list to be cleaned out. So that's to be discussed with Matt Corcoran as well. Okay, so go ahead.
I did drive out to Farmview 1 after the rains that we recently had to go to that back property line, back by the Patel property. I was nothing shy of amazed at, by not planting back there in that corner, how the water had found its way into the ground. I couldn't find any runoff. I couldn't find any puddling, nothing. So not planting that whole back corner, the fescue that has grown up, I took a couple pictures and sent them to Dan. That water did not come down and run across Mr. Patel's driveway. It did not wash things out. It looks like it sat pretty well in that field. And I also checked out the area here on Stackhouse where we recently had the work done out by the road. And again, amazed at how the water funneled right down to where it was supposed to, over those rocks and under the road. No erosion, even with the massive amounts of rain we had. So some of the work that we did do last year certainly has paid off for the types of storms we've been experiencing.
Great news. Remind me on Farmview 1 by Mr. Patel's house down, the blue roof house we're talking about?
Yes.
So the change was that there was no planting done or less planting done in the corner.
No planting done up at the top of that hill where the topography rises and then begins to fall off.
Yeah.
Farming was stopped there, and it was run kind of horizontally, and then over that hill left alone. Everything that grew up in this amount of time looks like things that have really just sopped up the water, to the point where I started to step in and I kicked up a couple of deer. So the bedding, it has gotten very thick vegetation in there where the deer are actually even bedding back there already. But it's done a great job soaking up water. So not having planted over that hill, I think is going to alleviate a lot of the water issue that they had been experiencing.
And Dan's aware of this, Sean, what you found?
He is. I sent him a text the other night and said, hey, what a great time it would be to go see what that looks like. And he said, yeah, I'm tied up. I went over and looked at it and snapped a couple pictures and sent them to him. There he is. And
there he is. Hi, Dan.
Really good.
So for anybody from the public just joining us is our treasurer, Dan Bonkowski. Nice to have you with us this evening.
Like the never.
Yeah, we were just talking about Farmview 1 and the great job that was, I guess, and your idea of not planting anything. The stewards did a nice job in that corner by the blue roof house, Mr. Patel. And Sean was just talking about how little runoff there is there now.
Yeah, I haven't been over there myself recently, but Sean, I saw your picture, and yeah, I thought it looked pretty nice. And I know that Tim, and he had some of his crew with him, and I know that in that beginning of the planting season, they they spent a lot of time up there. I think they spent a full day up there planting grasses
Oh, wow.
at that corner.
Someone, I guess Dan would be the best one, should give Tim some feedback of how that worked out. He may know, but then again, be good positive feedback for him.
Let him know that, I'm sure he knows, but let him know that we know.
Yeah, that we noticed, exactly.
Right.
And the other thing about that area is that I don't think the township has done this yet. Sean, did you notice whether they had punched a hole in the berm into the retention basin for water runoff there? Oh, you're on mute. Sean, you're on mute.
Sorry, I didn't go that far. I had shorts and flip flops on. Didn't feel like getting attacked by the ticks, so I didn't venture all the way down there. But I can tell you there was no water laying in the bottom of the basin. I did walk over that far to see what it looked like. Nothing laying there.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Dan, treasurer's report. I don't know if you're ready to do that.
Yeah, we didn't have any expenses since we met last.
Okay, so that's treasurer's report.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Do you have any updates from Mr. Patel at 2033 Trowbridge about the
Yeah, so
evergreen tree?
he has, so we sent him a reminder, I believe that was August 31st. And he did not respond back. I have it on my calendar for next weekend to send him another reminder.
Okay, good. And then anything further on the large tree, another one on Heather Ridge, the 2367 Trowbridge.
Yeah, so let's talk about this one. And I think that so some of us have been there. I think just me and Sean, like we're not out there to see this at all, right?
Right.
So basically what we have is there's two parts here. There's a number of trees, smaller trees, some of which are, leaning, growing up. The trunk is on our property, growing up, branches hanging over into their property. I gave them the go ahead. Obviously, anything that you want to cut from your property line going up, you're fine to do. You don't need our permission. They said they would want to get our permission and let us know in advance. I said, that's great. We appreciate that. But I said, you're good to go. Part two, we have a large tree that is mostly, if not almost entirely, on our property. And if you look at it, though, while there are some large branches that are hanging over their property, pretty high up, that wouldn't be the larger concern. The larger concern would be the danger of this tree falling onto their house. And if it did, and even if you cut a whole bunch of those branches going up, it's not that far from their house. And it's a very large tree to the extent that, the top of this tree is going to reach the far side of the house to some degree. So it is certainly understandable that there's a level of danger here and risk with this tree. It would not fall under a dead or dying classification. The tree is certainly very healthy, and you look at it by itself, you'd hate to see the tree go, but the risks associated with the tree and the danger now of falling toward or on their house that are out there. They had a tree person come and look at it who agreed that it's a healthy tree. If you look at the slope of the land and the tree, I certainly would say it's not going to fall away from the house. The way that is, that angle there and how everything is set up, it's certainly not going to fall away from the house. Now, is it from there, right, it's, you don't know. You don't know how it's going to fall exactly if and when it does ever fall. So what they are proposing, the homeowners are proposing, is they would like to take down this tree. And by the way, I think they feel the same way, that it's a nice, big, beautiful, healthy tree and they would hate to see it come down. But at the end of the day, they have serious concerns about the danger of it falling on their house. Their proposal, what they would like to do is take the tree down at their cost. So, Sean, I don't know if you have anything to add.
We actually had we had a full discussion of this because Sean had been out there, and we also talked about rules of the road for no, when we would feel like we could take down a tree or not. And the only thing I think that's preventing us from moving forward with saying okay to these neighbors is that perhaps we wanted to have Jim Majewski look at it, but I don't know if there's going to be any value in that.
I agree. I don't know if it adds any value.
Yeah, Jim is busy. I mean, I really value his insight, but from what Sean has said, Dan has said, yeah, I think, if in the judgment of an ordinary person, it could represent a risk, then I think that's our answer. I mean, and I hate to see big, healthy trees come down as much as any. But I'm reminded what my father always told me the definition of a weed is. A weed is a plant in the wrong location. A corn stalk is a weed in a wheat field. So you can have a good, healthy tree, but if it's in the wrong location, it's a weed.
Yeah.
And you gotta get rid of it. I mean,
well, so I'd like to bring this topic to conclusion. I'll make a motion that we give the homeowners at 2367 Trowbridge Drive our permission to have that tree removed at their expense. Do we have a second?
with just a modification with a licensed tree, with a license.
And licensed and insured.
Yeah.
With a
I'll
license
second that motion that Michael made as modified.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so Dan, you'll communicate that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Regarding 2367?
Yes.
Trowbridge. Okay. All right. So, I think. Oh, and then there were two other topics, Dan, that we kind of went over because they're on the spreadsheet for Corcoran to take care of. The dead, dying trees on Heather Ridge Drive. The three of those where we were out there.
Yeah, which I think is certainly a winter project for Corcoran. Certainly no rush or urgency with those trees whatsoever.
And the other one was the buffer clean out, Farm View 1 at the angle there with near Woodside.
Yeah, which is something with Tim and with Tim Stewart, just for completeness there, I guess. He's already expressed, I think, to us in some sort of combination of all of us here a couple times about he's getting to the buffers. There's just delay, staff. It's a busy time of the year for him with farming as well.
But we actually added that, Dan, to the list for Corcoran to do because it looked like it needed a more concerted clean out like we did on Leadham and Stackhouse. Do you agree?
Yeah, probably. I don't know if that's an imminent kind of thing, meaning I don't know if that's 6 months or 12 months or 18 months. I would add to that, Heather Ridge certainly has a number of areas that I would put on par with, I think, that little corner there of Farmview 1.
Mhm. Would you take a look then? We had a discussion of this spreadsheet that's for Corcoran for the winter, because Sean's going to be talking to him tomorrow. Sean, talking
Yeah,
to
we'll
Matt?
see him tomorrow. Dan, what was the
So-
property that we met on last month? What was that property?
It was. Uh, 1449 Heather Ridge.
I would propose that we add that to the list, because number one, we have to have removed what we put over there, but
Yeah.
that might be part of a slightly larger project or even a larger project, in that I don't think just right behind that property needs to be addressed in the buffer.
Yeah.
But we may be working in that buffer to the winter project. And if that's true, then we don't need to list each of the properties that need addressing. We would just do the buffer area. But if we decide not to do that at Heather Ridge, we should be lining up some of these homes where, you know, it has gotten well overgrown, and that's one. And I think you said at least 2 or 3 houses down, it looked the same.
So at just for the notes here in the minutes, at 1449 Heather Ridge, Sean and I went out there, took down a tree from our neighbor's property, you know, from their property, a dying tree, if you will, kind of in the fence a bit, that was up and down. We took it down, cut it up, threw it over the fence back on our property then. And this was something that we had reached out to Corcoran on. He wasn't able to get to it. So our thought was, let's just take care of this tree ourselves, get it cut up, leave it in the buffer, so then Corcoran can come back out and clean it all up over the winter time. There's a number of houses along that stretch there where I think the homeowners are taking care of the property in a pretty good way, like our side or the fence line at least, in a pretty good way. And I think it allows Tom to kind of really get in there and keep it clean, where you have others that have these old white pines now that are just, you know, a bit of a mess, some falling over, a lot of these mulberries in there that are creating havoc, just growing all over the place and just not letting the buffer get the ability to have that buffer cleaned out. So, and that's where Sean's going, is that there might be another project there about half dozen homes worth, maybe more, that might need a little bit of clean out in the buffer area. Just a nice, same thing as Leadham's. Go through, take the pines up a ways, clean out some of the nuisance trees and bushes that have grown, clearing out some brush that's in there, just to make it easier to maintain and keeping them nice and clean go forward.
I added that to the spreadsheet, Dan, just for reference. All right, it's in there for now.
And it sounds like what you're saying, Dan, on back to Farmview 1, that besides that little area off of Greenbrier Court where we got the neighbor complaining, that there's some areas also needed. So maybe that's a sort of complete walk around with Matt as well.
Yeah, so we got 2 sides of that field where we have our neighbors. We have that little semicircle area there off of Greenbrier. And, you know, for Sean and Dennis, for your benefit, that's the stretch where the township mows that when they go back to the retention basin.
Mm-hmm.
So when they get back to, they cut that when they drive back, then they mow the retention basin, then they cut through the homeowner back there. They cut through the backside of his property, mow another retention basin, then come back out. And they used to cut that wider, that little area there. It's much more narrow now than what they used to maintain that. Not that necessarily is the cause of anything here, but it's just part of it. I think we just got the same thing that we have everywhere else. It's just time, passage of time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
For your
Dennis.
spreadsheet, for your spreadsheet, Sean, and next week I'll come back with more specificity, but I know on Makefield Brook, the buffer that is on Brentwood Road, has that same situation where there's a lot of big old white pines whose limbs are now 10 feet into the buffer and blocking and making that trimming difficult. I'm going to go over. I'll go through that again before the next meeting and add that, because I think that's a potential winter project as well. There's a
Okay. I'll add that in, Dennis, and if you can get back to me with a reference property number,
Okay.
that would be great.
Nope.
Just to get me in the vicinity for when I go. My goal is we'll take in each of these and we'll pick a date to go walk around with Mr.
Okay.
Corcoran on whoever can make it. But I'd like to go visit each
Okay.
of these and have him look at with us. So a reference property would be great. In case you're not with us, I can at least get close to it.
Will do.
Okay, but I'll put it in now.
Great.
Mike, are we under other business?
We still are, yes.
I just want to note for the record, just so it's in the minutes, that it's the position of Farmland Preservation, Inc., that should any development be proposed for the Great Nun property, which is owned by HRH Management Company, that we would like the township to consider creating some more preserved farmland when and if that property is developed.
What property is that?
The Gray Nun property,
Yeah.
Quarry
Right.
Road, it's owned by HRH Management Company.
Ah, okay. Sure, we've expressed that in the past. Thank you, Dennis.
Put it in the minutes.
Yeah. Okay,
Just,
Dennis.
do you want to make that a motion to pass along some sort of comment to the Board of Supervisors, or?
I mean, I think we've made that clear in multiple meetings. I'm just thinking it might pay to be sure it's in the minutes every so often.
Cool.
And we'll all keep an eye out for it becoming more active, official.
Right.
Okay. Under any other business, I have another topic here. This is something I came upon when I was cleaning out my desk. I probably can't see that too well, but it's a series of documents that our accountant at the time, Small, put in front of us as policies that we should consider to have. For instance, whistleblower policy, document retention and destruction policy, public inspection disclosure policy and procedure that corporations usually have. So I just wanted to bring it up and put it in the minutes that we should probably address these, whether we need these or whether we want any of them in particular. We already have our conflict of interest statement that we all signed, so that's been done. That was one of the other documents. But perhaps at an upcoming executive session, we might, go over these and think about implementing them.
Yeah, what we might want to do, I don't know if we were as formal in some of our minutes back then. I know when Robert Small came in and went through documents and went through financials with us, but to the extent, did we ever formally adopt those? I doubt it that we ever technically formally adopted them with a vote.
Right.
Or so I'm I agree. Would be a good idea to just discuss them and do that in a vote to make sure that we are formally adopting some of these other policies.
Yeah, and then we can post them in our SharePoint site and have them there permanently. But we should know what's in them before we vote on them, I would think.
Yes, we need to review them, yes.
Yes, yes. So I'll scan them in and then put them out there. That'll be another to do for me. Let me put that down.
Mike, if I could just, if you scan those in the SharePoint,
Yeah,
be awfully certain that it's marked as draft or proposal or something.
yeah, right.
You know, a year later, you look at a document in SharePoint, you think that, oh, it's already there, but
Yeah,
you're providing it for information only. Yeah.
excellent point. Yeah, I'll stamp them or something to make sure they're draft. Okay, so I'll go over action items now. John, any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay, so I'll go over action items. So I have Dennis to draft some verbiage around tree removal, so a proposal for that. Sean, I wrote down, I don't think we talked about it this way, but see if this is okay, to draft language for a future letter regarding fence integrity.
Mhm.
Yep. Dennis, to speak to Sam and Bob about getting a list of authorized hunters, including names, telephone numbers, email, general contact information. I'm going to contact the farmers about mowing more frequently during the growing season, specifically every other month, I'll suggest. Dan, it would be a good idea to give Tim some feedback that we noticed that there's less runoff on Farm View 1 now from what he's done. Positive feedback there. You're also going to communicate with the homeowners at 2367 Trowbridge about we're okay with them removing their tree. Sean, to add in properties we discussed this evening to the spreadsheet for the work for Corcoran to do in the winter. And I understand that it'll take more than that. It'll take some walkthroughs and walk around to fine tune things, right, Sean?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to scan the documents that Bob Smaller, accountant, sent to us as draft. I'll mark them draft and put them into SharePoint for us to discuss at an upcoming executive session meeting, which I'll need to schedule as well. So with
Mike,
that,
I think
yes,
there's one
anything else?
other, Mike. Dan is going to reach out to our neighbor about his trees that are planted on our property and the removal of them. But just if Dan can follow up with us how that goes, I think we all have vested interest in that. We've gone out there, we've been very patient with it, but do want to see that this agreement is followed through on.
Good. I'll add that. All right. If there's nothing else, I think we can call for adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So long.
Thank you, gentlemen.